While excitement is building ahead of the game tomorrow between MKL Gaels and Mullinahone in the Munster Ladies Football Junior Final, and we're building up to it. Remember, you can see the game tomorrow on CK Streaming. It's the only place you can see it. It's live and exclusive. And joining us to look ahead to it is PJ Ryan, manager of Moyne-Templetouhy Ladies Football Team, and Donal Barry of Kerry Sports Hub. How are you doing, lads?
Yeah, good evening. Thank you very much.
Too bad now. Donal, starting with yourself. Suppose two new teams in a final. Huge excitement in both counties.
Yeah, truthfully, I suppose to be honest with you, if you sat down here 12 months ago and you said would Milltown, Castlemaine and Listroy and the Autumn be joining up and heading up to a Munster final, I'd say very few people would have put money on it. They're a new team, I suppose, MKL Gaels. There's great excitement there. I mean, I suppose a couple of days ago we had the storm, all the flags that were put up were blown down, so they were all put back up again ahead of tomorrow, which is vital. It's great to see it. I suppose it's Munster Championship. It means an awful lot more possibly to junior clubs because they're smaller clubs. They're girls that are probably winning their first county championship, and I suppose these are huge days and huge journeys. And you can see that especially with the MKL Gaels story. I suppose their progression through to the final. They only won the semi-final by a point. They won the final by a point, and they've taken a bit of a gallop now in Munster, which is great for them. But I mean, the amount of, we'll say, social media presence and the amount of goodwill and good wishes and the whole lot, regardless of whether there's a cup coming home or not, these couple of weeks have been absolutely special to the club. And there's a great buzz, there's great anticipation, and I presume that the same obviously is on the Tipperary side. But down here in Kerry at the moment, certainly the three parishes around the Mid-Kerry area are really taking to the girls. The pictures are up, the schools are promoting it. And I suppose, look, while Kerry don't get too many All-Ireland finals, this is certainly an All-Ireland final feeling for the MKL Gaels. So hopefully now they'll do the best they can tomorrow when the whistle goes. I suppose, whether they win or lose, I think, from a Kerry perspective, they have been great ambassadors, and hopefully they can go one step further.
Yeah, and Peter, Mullinahone, a small parish, they've really captured the imagination and tip with the style of football they've played all year, and the whole county are really behind it.
Absolutely, yeah. Like all rural clubs, GAA in sport is huge in Mullinahone. They're a very proud parish when it comes to their sport, and I'm sure the whole parish will be behind them, as the whole county are behind them. But like you said, they're playing a very good style of football this year, and they seem to have a very good underage structure in place. They're under 14s, under 16s were in finals this year, and they've done a lot of work and they're going really well. I'm sure the whole county is behind them and wish them the best of luck. But going up again, Tipperary going up again, a Kerry team any day would be underdogs, but going up against an amalgamation in a Kerry team, they'll surely be underdogs. But I wouldn't write off Mullinahone after seeing them all year with the style of football they play and the players they have in the field.
Yeah, bringing in somebody like Paul Kelly to be involved, like that was a huge coup for them. And Paul is kind of unassuming in that now, and he says, "Sure, I'm only standing on the sideline," but the work that he's done with that team is phenomenal.
Well, yeah, you can see he has brought a bit of expertise and professionalism from his own hurling career and his own county career. But I mean, Mullinahone have been working hard all year. They set their sights high to start of the year. They were doing a lot of Zoom sections during COVID amongst themselves before Paul even came on board. But yeah, he has added a good bit to the team. You can see from his own career that he has brought that bit extra, and they've really benefited from him.
Yeah, Donal, I suppose Gaels, they've had huge heartache over the last couple of years, so they've shown great character to not only get back and win a county, but to reach a Munster final.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I suppose, look, they've been knocked to the final hurdle 3 years in a row, and I suppose, it does take a bit of spirit to come back. I suppose, it's funny. In hindsight, it's funny with the whole COVID thing last year. If they had won, they wouldn't have had the Munster experience. So maybe there was a bit of a blessing in disguise not coming out for that, because obviously they were all cancelled. But certainly over the last number of years, it's a team that has transitioned, we'll say, from a team that had a lot of girls traditionally in their mid-20s who wouldn't have had a whole pile of success early on, to an awful lot of kids that are coming through now at 17, 18 and 19, who have all been reasonably competitive at, we'll say, 15, 16 coming up along the way. A lot of them, while possibly not making it into the inter-county scene at the higher level, they certainly have been hanging around development squads and everything. So they're a team that have developed and grown. I mean, if you look at their midfield pairing, for example, Lorna Hickey is 32. Funnily enough, when they were founded in 1999, she was on the under 12 team that won their first ever county title. So can you imagine 20 years later if she'd be on the team that could win a Munster title? But she's playing midfield with a girl who's 18 years old. So there's an awful lot of that kind of in the team. And I suppose Damien Murphy and the gang they've had to work slowly with that over the years, because when you have experience and youth, it doesn't always work straight away, and they have been building. But they certainly have, in the last couple of games, particularly the last 2 Munster outings, they begin to play with a little bit more abandonment. I suppose in the Kerry campaign, games are tougher, and I suppose this sounds mad now, but there's summer teams and there's winter teams, and we're in the middle of winter now at the moment. So I mean, at this level, you're going to need a bit of strength, a bit of physicality, and obviously a couple that can score as well. And I think Milltown tick all those boxes. Certainly in the last number of games. The only concern that I would imagine that they would have going up against, I suppose, Mullinahone, is that if you look at the 2 semi-finals, they certainly weren't carbon copies of each other. I mean, in fairness to Mullinahone, they went down and they beat a good Castlehaven team. And any day you take the Cork champions out of a Munster Championship, you have to be respected. And I suppose from the other side of the coin, a 6-10 to 1-4 doesn't really give you a whole lot of headaches going into a final, whereas Mullinahone certainly, they certainly, I suppose it was a case of steel versus steel, and they came out the other side of it. And I suppose from the Kerry perspective, you'd look at that and you'd say, you have to be worried, you have to be afraid of a team that will go down and probably take on the competition favourites, and not only beat them, but finish that game very, very strong. I mean, they scored 1-2 when they needed to score it. They have a great footballer in Lorraine O'Shea, always a top class footballer. I know her myself actually from 2015 in the colleges, when she won an All-Star award playing midfield in the O'Connor Cup weekend with DCU. And just to put her into perspective from us looking in it, is that she was on a team that had Niamh O'Dea, she was on a team that had Sarah Rowe from Mayo as well, and she was an all-star within that. Obviously Jennifer Grant, of course, in Tipperary would be well known to Tipperary fans as well. The two of them were the all-star midfield from that. So I mean, she has calibre and she has class, and she showed that as well the last day. And I suppose the one thing from a MKL Gaels side is that these are headaches and these are views that Damien would have to bring back and say, listen, this is what we'll have to curb if we're looking to win this championship.
Yeah, because Peter, looking at Mullinahone, every game that they played all year, they got off to a great start. Arravale in their first game, and Pats, and even their county final. Now, Ye put it up to them for a long time before they eventually got over the line. But I suppose, apart from yourselves, it was hard to see where they were being tested in Tip. And when it was put up to them the last against Castlehaven, who were probably not wholly favourites for Munster, probably favourites for the All-Ireland, they really turned it on in the last 15 minutes when the backs were to the wall.
Yeah, well, they're a very athletic team. They have a great mixture of youth and experience on the team. Like, it's easy to talk about the two O'Sheas. They have a currently on the county team. And Lorraine, a super athlete. She was a talented sprinter in her athletic days, and she still has that speed. But there is a great mix of players around them, but there is a very organised team. They defend very well. They seem to drop back and defend the dangerous spot in front of the goals. But equally, when they break going forward, everybody knows their job. And if they need to create space, they know how to create space. So, yeah, look, they might have got off to a slow start at the beginning of the year in the league, but they still ended up in the league final. and they ended up in a league final against an intermediate team and held their own against them. They came out second on the day, but coming second to an intermediate team is no mean feat when you're playing junior. So yeah, in the junior championship, then they kind of, from the first game, they were earmarked as favourites for it. And while we did put it up to them, we ran out of steam in the last 15 minutes, and they were still motoring. So that'll give you an indication how athletic they are. That when they need that bit at the end of the game, they still have it, and they showed that again in the semi-final.
Yeah, you're just saying there, they all know their jobs. Like, it's very easy to talk about the two O'Sheas, and I suppose Molly Walsh at centre back and Nicole Shelley in the centre of the field. But the two wing backs know their job as well, and the two wing forwards as well. They know how to slow the play down and create the space. Next minute, one of them is just gone with that space. To be a turn of speed out of one of them, and that creates the openings. So, like, they will go down with this game with plenty of confidence in the way that they played all year, regardless of it being a Kerry team or not.
Yeah, that's what I said. They are very organised. They all know their job, whether it's in defence or attack. They're able to win the majority of their own kickouts, which gives them a platform to attack all the time. And yeah, it's easy to talk about the strength down the middle, but the whole team performs well. And like I said, they're very organised.
Yeah, and Donal, I suppose from the outside in, people wouldn't know much about Gaels. And obviously the two main names would be Caoimhe Evans and Ciara Murphy. But who else should we be looking out for in this game tomorrow?
Yeah. I suppose that there's a couple of one. I suppose first of all, I suppose we'll start at the back is Zita Ash. I think goalkeepers in this type of weather and these type of days are crucial, and Zita is, I suppose, an outfield player that was converted back into goal. She's got a solid kick out. She's one that can kind of mind her backs, haven't left any kind of silly goals in or given away any silly frees, and that's very important because on a day in the weather that's coming, frees play a big role in it. And then on the other end of the field, I suppose, Maeve Rochford, watch for her, superb free taker, 19, 20 years old, very good girl, able to win ball, take her time, put the ball down. She's a scoring threat. I suppose, okay, you mentioned Ciara Murphy. I suppose I mentioned she's a Kerry player, and so is Caoimhe Evans, of course. But the one thing about them is they're at their infancy, really, on the Kerry team. I mean, they're really only kind of nailing down their places. They will be fantastic footballers in the interim, but they're still learning. So even carrying, we'll say, the intercounty mantle in, that at times brings its own pressure on us. Midfield, I mentioned earlier, Lorna Hickey. I mean, 32 years old, a wealth of experience. Certainly won't be galloping up and down the field, but a girl that can win ball, spray it around very handily, and kind of ends up back in the centre half back line as well, and defends when you need to. And I think you'll find that from the Gaels the next day. They won't be overly exposed. They won't go majorly on the attack either, but they'll certainly hold their own from the centre half back line onwards. And in the games where they need to kind of finish strong and hold their own, they've been able to do that. The only concern that I would have is that the last two games that they've played, I suppose with due respect to the opposition, you want a kind of a closer game, or you want a bit of a fight, or you want a bit of a tighter game, and they certainly haven't been testing the last two games, and they certainly wouldn't want to give Mullinahone a quick gallop in the first quarter, because one thing that strikes me with the Mullinahone team is that they're a physically imposing, tall bunch. I mean, I don't know what kind of sport they play, but they certainly have the look of basketballers all around them, and there might be a basketball culture down there in Kilnall and the whole lot. But a team like that can hold possession and difficult to get it off of. They'll be tough to break down, but I think it will go down to the wire. I think it's going to be a game where free taking and getting your scores are going to be vital. So don't be surprised if it's going to be a tale of two free takers at the end of it, and the one that'll nail more certainly will have the advantage.
Yeah, and just looking at the two teams there, the starting teams that we've been given, Caoimhe Evans is named at centre forward. Will she stay at centre forward? Will she play midfield during the year at some stage?
I suppose I suppose positions don't mean a whole pile now as long as you're in the first 15. The one thing about Cueva is Cueva will do two roles for you. I mean, I think they will leave Niamh Broderick in midfield. She's a fine player. She had a storming game actually in the semi-final. Bouncing up the field, scored a couple of goals. But I suppose the one thing about it is when you score 6-10 to 1-4, it'd be wrong to say that it was a big test. Cueva will probably bounce in around the middle of the field. The one matchup that you will have to watch out for is that from the Kerry perspective or from the MKL Gaels perspective, who's going to pick up Lorraine O'Shea? I mean, Lorraine O'Shea scored 1-4 against Castlehaven. I'll be honest with you, like Castlehaven, I suppose, came into that game probably more favourites. I mean, they did put Mullinahone under massive pressure in the opening quarter, missing off their scores. But when they got into a dogfight, they didn't have the extra gear to get out of it. And I think that is kind of one of the most important things, not to get into a dogfight from the MKL Gaels perspective. So I would think getting your matchups right with the likes of Lorraine and the other girl, the Shelley girl midfield as well. I mean, she's a strong girl, well able to hold the ball. You're right about the two wing backs as well. I mean, they're not exactly kind of we'll say they're well able to mark their players when they want to. And the one thing about it that impressed me against Castlehaven is that Gráinne O'Sullivan is a fantastic footballer for Castlehaven, and they simply ground her out of the game. So I think it's going to be a case like all good finals. It's going to be players that we're not even talking about stepping up on the day. They're going to be the players to produce the odds. So if you're looking for a name out of the blue, I look at Lorraine Kennedy, corner forward for MKL Gaels. She's a goal poacher. She put 2 in the net the last day. There's going to be other players popping up, but for MKL Gaels' perspective, if they can get their matchup right with Lorraine O'Shea, I think that will give them a chance. And they probably won't be putting Cueva Evans on it because I think Cueva is her own attacking threat, and I think maybe that would give Mullinahone a bit of a headache as well on the other side. But I certainly wouldn't think they'll be cancelling each other out.
Yeah, and I suppose talking about players that might step up to the mark page, a lot of people actually weren't aware that Denise Gall is playing for Mullinahone. Is actually Denise Gall, the Kilkenny Camogie player. She might have a big bearing in this game of full forward.
Yeah, I suppose with Mullinahone bordering Kilkenny, they have got in a couple of Camogie players there, Denise Gall being one of them. She's a very, very tall, athletic girl. She has played midfield throughout the year there, but having her in at full forward with her height and that she'll trouble a full back. So, look, I'm sure Mullinahone have their own game plan, and I'm sure they have watched MKL and whether she starts at full forward or midfield or wherever, but you would want a good full back to stand beside her.
Yeah, because we haven't seen Chloe Gunn. She got the first goal, the last. Now she'd been playing wing forward all year, and they named her at the corner forward, and they kind of brought her out to give space inside. Now she did manage to get in, like we said, for the goal, but the likes of Chloe Gunn and a few of them might be brought out around the middle of the field there to counteract the MKL Gaels as well. So there's certainly a lot of interesting matchups there, Donal, and it could be a case of who gets the matchups right.
Yeah, I suppose look, matchups are always crucial. I suppose the one thing about club level is that you don't really know who's good till 15 minutes into the game, and then all of a sudden you're saying, we haven't factored in this player. And I suppose with all the amount of videos you watch, you're not going to be the same up as an inter-county team. And I think that's what makes the junior level special, because you're talking about a spread of ages from 18 to nearly 33 or 34 on both sides. We're talking about players who have had inter-county experience, who are on their inter-county journey now or are coming back from it. And you've also had an incredible amount of players who, I suppose, maybe they were tipped at 14 or 15 to be the next best thing, and they never kind of really made it. And, this all brings it back to them, and this is their one big day. The one thing that I've admired about MKL Gaels throughout is that they really are the sum of their parts. I mean, to be picking one or two individual players out of them, it's probably not their game. And the other thing about them is that they've been fairly tested, their character, over the last number of years. We mentioned about the 3 finals they lost. And I suppose sometimes, you feel your name is on the cup sometimes for no other good reason than it's on the cup. They played Legion in the semi-final. They were cantering to a 7 or 8 point win. All of a sudden, Legion produced 2 goals, and it was right down to the wire. Could have gone from their grasp. They hung on. The final against Abidorney, I mean, it was an awful bad day in Fitzgerald Stadium. Scores extremely difficult to get. They led 6-3. They scored the last point, and with maybe 20 minutes to go. And it was a case of hanging on, and they hung on to win by a point. So there's a great bit of character in this team. I suppose the Kerry thing too, at times, I suppose, wearing my Kerry hat, it's a bit over bloated. I mean, the last time that we won a Munster Junior was 2013, which is a bit of a famine. And we don't traditionally do that great when we leave Kerry. I mean, we haven't won a senior club title in 35 years. And the last day, Aherlow gave our own champions, Southern Gaels, a bit of a schooling. So I suppose, well, PJ might want the underdog hat. I mean, we certainly have plenty underdog hats that we could wear down here as well. But ultimately, I mean, it's the team that will want to win it. And I think these are two teams that, as I said at the start, probably didn't think they were going to be here. They mightn't have thought they were going to be even in the county final. They certainly didn't think they were going to be here. And when you're here now, you have to win it. And I think, whatever team doesn't deliver on the day, there'll be a sense of, what if? And I certainly think both sides are going to leave everything they have on the line. And I think that teases up for an absolutely fantastic game tomorrow.
Yeah, and Peter, the fact that Aherlow are playing down there as well, I just looking at both the Kerry social media and the MKL Gaels, they're calling on huge support to come from Kerry, but the fact that 2 tip teams are down there, and no doubt they'll be in early to get behind Mullinahone as well, that could have a huge bearing on it too.
Absolutely, yeah. Local support is great, and when you have a whole county behind you, it's even better. But like Donal said, for a junior club to get to a Munster final, it might be a once in a lifetime opportunity. It's not very often a club gets to a Munster final, and when you're in it, you absolutely want to win it. So, but we're after having a storm last night, and I think there's a bad day forecast for Sunday as well. So weather could have a big impact on the game. The field mightn't be as quick or as lively as either team would like it. There's a bit of wind there. It could have a big bearing on scores and that. And I suppose neither teams are used to playing at this time of the year. So we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, absolutely, with Aherlow in it as well against Moyne Abbey, there should be a big tip support there.
Yeah, and Donal, are you willing to call it, or do I need to ask what way you're going?
Well, I like all Kerry people, we're not selfish, so you can have the senior one and we'll take the junior one. I'll be honest with you, I'm actually hugely excited to know how it turns out, because I suppose I've seen this team grow from the club that was formed back in 1999, and I suppose really in many aspects it was a place where ladies football shouldn't have taken off at all. I mean, there was so much going on around it, and I suppose like all ladies clubs, it was 2 or 3 kind of tough characters who just kept coming back to the table saying we'll have a club and we'll have an under-12 team and we'll have an under-14 team, and they really kind of stuck in there throughout the 90s. I mean, their biggest win up to then was a Junior B in 2010, which is a hell of a long time ago. But a lot of the players that are playing now, I suppose, the game has grown so much. There's so many kids playing it now, which is absolutely fantastic. And it would be huge, absolutely huge, for them, for their school, for their area, if they brought home a Munster title. I mean, it's no word of a lie. I mean, if you go over to Milltown now at the moment, it's the only show in town, and it's traditionally a GAA senior men's football area where you're talking about men's football or Kerry football or the whole lot. And for this week or two, for every to even stop talking about COVID and restrictions and everything else, and just to be talking about a Munster final, I think they've certainly done themselves proud to get there. And I suppose, like as PJ said, you're in it to win it at this stage. But I'll be honest with you, at this level, it's the team that is better on the day will win it. And look, I certainly know a lot of people down there on the Kilkenny border as well. They love their football. Tipperary have come an awful long way, I suppose, over the years as well. I mean, the other thing about it is that their seniors are in Division 1. Kerry aren't in Division 1, we're in Division 2. We'd like to play the underdog thing at the time, but a win for Kerry at this level could push us on another small bit. As I said, look, I won't be selfish. You can have the senior, and hopefully we'll sneak the junior one half you.
Here's PJ, in the words of Pat Spillane, he's a cute Kerry whore, ain't he?
Absolutely. Mullinahone as well. Mullinahone will be a very proud GAA parish, and they'll be known in GAA circles. Probably not known as much in ladies football, but have been growing over the last few years. And I know from playing games over there, the whole parish gets behind them when their team is on the field. And look, they're junior players, they're club players. The occasion might get to them. We don't know how they react to a Munster final, but you'll be hoping that they go down. I've seen Mullinahone we tried to put it up to them. They dug their way out. It was put up to them in the semi-final. They dug their way out. So I wouldn't write them off. I think they'll give it a hell of a go.
So it looks like one apiece there. Lads, thanks for being with us, and look forward to a great game of football.
Yeah, absolutely. And just from the Kerry perspective, it's absolutely fantastic that the game has been streamed live. I mean, it's a game, I suppose, in the times we are, people are afraid to travel outside their own houses for a lot of things. And I think it's exceptionally important that these games are being shown and streamed and for free, which is absolutely fantastic. And, I mean, there's not a lot of people down here in Kerry exceptionally grateful for what you're doing. And while we're not hoping you'll get the result you want, we will certainly make sure we'll use the service and we'll watch it anyway.
Thanks, Donal.
I'd like to just say that as well, that CK Streaming have worked very closely with the Tipperary County Board this year, and through a difficult year with COVID and everything, they brought an awful lot of games into people's homes where they wouldn't have seen them otherwise, and we're hugely indebted to them for the work they've done throughout the year. So thanks very much to Tomas and his gang.
No, we've really enjoyed it now, and we're looking forward to tomorrow as well. And don't forget that we'll be live on air at 11:30. It's on our YouTube channel. It's the only place where you can see the game. It's live and exclusive. And if you subscribe to the YouTube channel and check us out on all our social media, the links are there for you. And we'll talk to you on it tomorrow.